hello everybody and Merry Christmas. Welcome back to another Big Finish audio drama review. In today's review we're going to be taking a look at the 11th release of the Torchwood main range for 2021. It is of course The Grey Mare, featuring Ianto Jones as portrayed by Gareth David Lloyd. This release is available to order now on the Big Finish website, $8.99 for the download and of course $10.99 for the physical CD. That can of course also be purchased as a part of a bundle featuring the other recent Torchwood releases. Now once more we are concluding the year with a rather festive, mysterious, snowy story focused around Christmas, something of which I was very excited to see when this story was initially announced, after previously really enjoying The Crown, which was of course released last year, featuring Queen Victoria. As always with the Torchwood main range, you can of course listen to all the stories as a part of this range by themselves. They are all isolated stories in their own right, there's no plot arcs or anything like that, and this is one of those stories in particular that I recommend listening to if you are looking for a little bit of haunted, festive storytelling with a little bit of ghostly and paranormal stuff thrown in there as well. Wrap up warm, get yourself a nice hot drink and listen away on a cold winter's evening to Torchwood The Grey Mare, as written by Stuart Pringle and Lauren Mooney. There is something quite special with this story, and much like last Christmas, it's great to see Torchwood have its own Christmas special in a sense. Previously, we had a little bit of a Dickens-esque ghost piece featuring the Queen herself in The Crown, and this year we have the isolated Welsh countryside for a tale around Welsh folklore, in particular the Mary Lloyd, and apologies for the non-Welsh, probably quite terrible pronunciation. I do love a Torchwood story which embraces its more adult and grim side. The Grey Mare does have a few disturbing moments, in particular in relation to death, which I do not recommend for younger listeners. And just to note, this story does also feature a little bit of strong language. Ianto Jones has decided to be alone for Christmas. By renting a little cottage, he wishes to get away from the busy world of Cardiff, but little does he know, the company is going to come to him. I absolutely love the way that The Grey Mare uses a haunting story whilst offering a little bit of a Torchwood link in there too. It's a seamless blend incorporating the themes of life and death, with the key component of the Torchwood spin-off series overall being the rift itself. I think it would be no spoiler to say, because it is Torchwood and there does tend to be the odd casualty here and there, there is a moment where we find a death throughout this story, or at least two people which have been killed by the Force within the episode itself, which is of course the Mary Lloyd, and it is a rather grim death. It's one of those stories that you can't help but kind of visualise in your own mind, and as a result from that you can tell that it is a very well-written story because of the way that the death is described by the witnesses of said death. So you have Ianto along with Mrs. Watkins as well, and we basically have this whole idea of humans kind of clinging on to the warmth. Again, this is something that is very eerie and creepy, especially when surrounded by snow, of course, in this rather remote location, because we almost have humans being reduced to something that isn't really very human, because it is in the presence of this rather unusual spooky force which at the same time is raising people from the dead. It's kind of a little bit of a Dickens story in likes of The Christmas Carol with Scrooge. However, with this story it's kind of taken to another mysterious level. The whole concept of the Mary Lloyd is really interesting and yet quite bizarre. The spooky idea of something knocking on your door late at night whilst wishing to come inside is very creepy, especially when said something is a grim skull of a horse. And not to add to the fact that you're also in a rather isolated village in the middle of nowhere. The sound design on this release is stellar, an absolutely perfect winter's evening listen which lands the listener within the story location. I especially recommend listening along to this one through the use of headphones. You feel like the wind is blowing around you and the knocking on the cottage door catches you off guard, really adding to the horror experience. Miss Watkins and Daniel are also a perfect addition to this story, offering a younger and older approach to the tale. The dynamic between them and Ianto is one of emotion but also desperation as they tackle this unknown force. Miss Watkins in particular goes on a great journey throughout this story and makes for a perfect companion for Ianto himself. Gareth David Lloyd also contributes a lovely likeable performance, making him one of the more earthly relatable members of the Torchwood team, with thanks to Big Finish once again really fleshing out this character. Not to give away too many spoilers, but it's nice to see once more with this story that we're kind of linking into that emotional journey that Ianto goes into within the early series of Torchwood and these certain events that happened throughout that series, in particular in relation to loss, very much like how we got to see within the Great Sontaran War, but also the struggles with relationships as well. It's great to see that interlocked throughout this story, kind of giving it a purpose within the grand scheme of things in the Torchwood universe. There is the odd joke here and there, and I do think that generally the characters get along very well, but I actually think it is quite a straight-faced Torchwood story. We kind of have people laughing in the face of sheer desperation and this force that quite clearly has a lot of power, but they're kind of having a bit of fun with it at the same time, but said fun and said comedy here and there doesn't take you out of the action. In particular with Mrs. Watkins, you have a few little revelations about her past and kind of her life and the people that she once knew or has lost along the way, and I love the way that throughout this story we have them waiting for the Mary Lloyd, of course, because the Mary Lloyd comes knocking on people's doors, but as a result they have to just sit there and wait. It's kind of like a twisted version of Trick or Treat in Halloween. However, you know that a force is coming to knock on your door that does quite literally want you dead. It isn't particularly too festive, but this episode works very well. Still evoke those festive vibes. The way that loneliness at Christmas is also captured throughout this story. Again, that comes to play at the very end of this episode in a rather heartwarming way. We've had a rather bleak story, but it ends with a rather nice tone in there as well, and to be quite honest, I like to think in my own personal headcanon that Ianto perhaps maybe comes up to this village every Christmas from this story onwards. We meet up again with Mrs. Watkins and the other locals to kind of fill her in with what's been going on within the previous year of life. Rhiann Morgan, Duncan Wisby and Sion Daniel Young really bring this intriguing plot to life. And yes, perhaps it's one of those plots which is a tad mysterious towards the end. The mystical force of the Mary Lloyd is explained, but also not explained at the same time. It's just enough to keep me wondering, and more importantly, that line between alien extraterrestrial and Welsh folklore a little bit blurred. The Grey Mare uses the spooky elements of death well, using the local passings away to its benefit. It's twisted and challenges the protagonists, making the story more tense. It's something that I always love about this range, the variety of character from so many different walks of life. You see how the rift affects those around Wales, but also the life stories of these people. It doesn't always have to be about aliens and invasions, or even alien sex gas creatures in Torchwood's case. I enjoyed learning about these fictional characters and being taken out of reality for an hour of my life to simply put myself in the shoes of these people trapped in the freezing cold in the Welsh countryside. In summary, I really like The Grey Mare. Stuart Pringle and Laura Mooney have produced something quite special with this one, and I certainly think it's going to stick in my mind. The characters are superbly written in both strengths and flaws, and the production with sound design feels polished, really adding to that atmospheric experience. If you are wanting a spooky, otherworldly story this Christmas, then The Grey Mare is definitely for you. So there we have it, that is The Grey Mare, and with that does of course also conclude the Torchwood main range reviews for 2021. Very much like 2020, very happy that I was in fact able to cover this series. It's something of which that I didn't really tend to cover on the Host Productions. However, again, the 2021 stories that Big Finish have produced during lockdown have really evoked some brilliant storytelling with some really unique episodes, but also some lovely commentaries on humans and society as well. There is certainly some experimental episodes within the Torchwood series, and if you're curious, I definitely recommend giving this series a go. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on the Host Productions for regular Doctor Who content. Of course, on that note, Merry Christmas. I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.